Fantastic. Namaskar. Welcome to the show. Have you ever wondered why soft skills are called soft skills? Why not core skills, hard skills? What is soft really about soft skills? We all know situations in our career where we could not go further, or we know of others who could not go further, who struggled because they lacked a worldview, they lacked public speaking abilities, they lacked teamwork, collaboration, and the likes, and still we call these skills soft skills. So I've been wondering about these topics for a while now, and in the coaching sessions that I conduct, I often see that people come to me with situations like, uh, we have not been promoted for a while, we've not had a career change, I want something else. But when you speak to them, the root cause of most situations goes down to not having some of these so-called soft skills. Right? We will not get into the debate of why soft skills and why not some other name, maybe hard skills or core skills or life skills, like call them life skills, and so on. So we know the pain point, and if you dig deeper, most of you would see that there have been situations in your own career, at least they have been in my career, where I felt that had I made a proactive step, had I been a little better in communicating my expectations, had I been a better had I seized that moment, that particular moment, because after that moment is gone, you can keep thinking that, oh, I could have done this and I could have done that and XYZ, and kuch hota nahi. So because there is so much competition for everything, right? So you miss one moment, and that is the critical moment. Many such things over the years, I have also realized that having a worldview, for example, is one of, like what you call core skill or a life skill or soft skill. Now, having a we'll talk more about it when we get to deeper into the session. Having a worldview is extremely important, and that's an onion we need to peel. And to do all that, I have a guest today who's young, entrepreneurial, has started many, I would say, startups, and helped many others to start up, and speaks at TEDx like nobody's business. Is a very, very popular, I would say, speaker who's invited to many colleges, universities, and so on. And he's still in his mid 20s, right? So that's the joy of doing these sessions. Some of you have asked me. I get to learn from people who are much younger and are really shaking up this world. And you can join me in this learning session if you can. So, if you don't know me, my name is Anshuman Tiwari. I run this show called Manage Better for about almost 3 years now. This is episode number 94. So, if you do want to, you know, maybe watch similar kind of shows, you can follow me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and I do keep posting stuff around mid career and all. So, if you're new to the show and don't know me, that's a quick pitch I can have. Now, coming to the guest for today. So, Daksh Sethi is a four-time TEDx speaker, Joe Talk speaker, uh, and a corporate trainer, educational business consultant, soft skills trainer, and has positively impacted lives of over 40,000 individuals already. Right now, 40,000 is a huge number, I know, but the kind of work he does across colleges, across institutes, and all, in a few years, he's gotten to this number. And Daksh has worked with over 120 educational and corporate organizations across India. He's conducted, spoken at over 300 events, workshops, conferences across 30 cities, worked with top educational institutes as IIT Bombay, SRCC is Sri Ram College of Commerce in Delhi, Miranda House, Shahid Sukhdev College in Business Studies, and Delhi School of Economics, NIT Warangal, and many more. So, without further ado, I'll invite my good friend Daksh to the stream. Daksh ji, namaskar. How are
Sir,
you?
namaskar. I'm doing well. Looking forward to this. Super excited. हमने आपके shows देखे हैं and being on one of your episodes, I think this is an honor and super excited. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I'm
No.
doing well, enjoying my Saturday morning, and yeah, looking forward to this.
So I hope I'm not the disturbance on your Saturday morning, but
I consider this to be a fortunate Saturday morning with you
yeah.
on my TV screens and on my laptop screens. And though I'm not looking as sharp as you, I try my best to do so, but no,
this is
definitely not.
this is just this is just extra lighting, Daksh. You know the business. This
This
is
is
just extra
being
lighting.
modest and humble about it, nothing else.
Thanks, man. Thanks. So those who didn't realize Daksh is a soft skill trainer, in the last 30 seconds, you just saw a demonstration of what a soft skill trainer can do. He came onto the screen, took the moment and made sure that he belonged here and quickly set the stage. That's one of the, I would say, tricks of the trade, or things everyone can do. When you enter the room, you should belong there, and nobody in the room should feel that you are an intruder or something. So Daksh and I, of course, know each other. We met. We've spoken at the same event earlier last year in December, but this is an important skill to have, to come to a room or an online room these days, because a lot of things happen online. And Daksh, we will talk about this skill as well, because you do this quite often, and I'm sure in your training with students and corporates, this is one of the factors today, that how do you perform the same level of, I would say, public appearance online now, and not so much offline, because in the last 2 3 years the world has changed significantly. But I have a question, Doctor, and this is not a question that you might have been ready. So, people on the show, if I asked you to guess which is the most viral LinkedIn post from India, you would probably, take names that are more in the public domain. But this man here, this young man here, is the owner of that most viral LinkedIn post, and he has many in that series. But one post particularly, I don't know. Daksh, you fill me with the impressions. But last I checked, it had 715,000 likes or reactions, which means almost quarter to three quarters of a million reactions, 28,000 comments, 48,000 reposts, one single post, right? And
Yeah.
Daksh will tell us how many impressions it has had till date, that particular post.
About 32 million impressions. And,
32
to
million.
be honest, 32 million impressions. And in fact, as we speak, let me give you updated numbers. So 33.1 million impressions.
My
Uh,
God.
has increased. 7,14,000 likes, about 28,000 comments, and 47,000 reposts. Yeah, this was a really, really interesting moment for me. In fact, I could not figure out what was happening. And this was a part of my series of posts. If you actually
Yeah.
study that post, it's nothing extraordinary. It was just another post of the series that I was posting. But yeah,
No, it is a very, you say it is not nothing special. I agree. Maybe the wording is nothing special.
yeah,
And the reason I'm discussing this is that sometimes these things happen. So everybody in the audience who were watching this live and will see this later on as a recorded show, do take a moment to go to Daksh's profile, and in his featured section you will find this particular post. I will not spill the beans for you, because this show is not about the viral post. This show is
yeah.
just to learn from Daksh. But just to come back to the point, Daksh, I think the simplicity of the post is what strikes. People from uh, locations, obviously you don't get to 32 million, 33 million
In
impressions
India,
only from English speaking places, right? So you will have to go to, that post would have struck a chord with non English native speakers,
absolutely.
including many in India. So the simplicity of the language and the message then gets through. If you write a complicated post, or that leans on English or understanding of English, and people who don't have the same proficiency in English because of where they are born and studied and XYZ, they will not connect. So that is another lesson, and I wanted to start with this because, in my view, that particular series is actually what you embody. You bring a lot of simplicity to your message. You don't depend too much on language. You depend on the message, and that's something that we will try and peel. Okay, so one important thing is that this show is live on Daksh's feed as well. So if you're joining us from Daksh's feed, do take a moment to see my profile. I'm not too bad. I do fairly well. So you can follow me as well. And people who followed me or on the show from my profile, take a moment to follow Daksh. Brilliant, I would say we are only peeling one part of the onion called Daksh because there are three, four other things that he does. So we'll have to do another show to invite him to that. Okay, the video is not working. Somebody from your feed says video is not working. It's working for us. I have double checked. So please,
Yeah, it's working for me
maybe,
as well.
yeah,
I've
please.
opened my app.
Yeah, so
And
it okay. Before we jump in, Rashmi wants to know, can I know what does FT Daksh Sethi signify? So FT, Rashmi, FT is a short form used on for online shows called featuring. So whenever you see a podcast or something and the word FT says, it means featuring. So of course, it is a show that I am hosting. I don't need to be on the show line, right? So it is anyway a show that I host. So it is featuring Daksh Sethi. So but thank you for asking. Good temperament that if you don't know something, you should ask. Okay, so now getting deeper into the set. So that's the format of the show is that it will last for about 30 to 45 minutes or so. And I have some prepared questions, but we will also take questions from the audience, which is a reminder to the audience that if you have questions for Daksh, please start posting. If you join from YouTube, you can post on YouTube. If you join from Daksh's page or my page on LinkedIn, you can post there. Uh, we will pick up the questions. So first up, soft skills are of course the key differentiation today. I've said in today's post that I made that not that hard skills or domain skills are not important. Obviously they are important because if you don't have that, you're not in the race. So you won't be considered. But being considered, considering the competition we have, soft skills is clearly the differentiator. Would you agree? And have you seen this actually happen in your work? Because you have met thousands of students and corporate professionals in your career. Have you seen this happen? Any one or two examples that come to mind, or any theme that comes to mind quickly, so that we can re-emphasize this point for our audience?
Very rightly said, Anshuman. This is definitely a differentiator today. You can actually differentiate between two individuals based on how presentable, and not just presentable from prima facie, from the looks of what you're wearing and how you're carrying yourself, but also from the diction and the language that you're using and the clarity of thought, voice modulation. How clearly, how interestingly can I connect with you with respect to whatever you are talking? So I think that also, one can differentiate between two individuals. Somebody you would rather speak to, considering the fact that there are two individuals at the same level, at the same platform. How do I differentiate between two individuals? The soft skills play a very, very important role. Technical skills can be learned, can be taught. That back and forth can of course take place, but soft skills really comes in from within, and you really have to work on yourself. There's something called cognitive learning. So a lot of learning also takes place through not going through a course or a program, but looking at other people, understanding their body language, understanding their grammar and the kinds of words that they're using, their power words, and how is it that they're carrying themselves. So that lingo also has to change over a period of time. So soft skills really play an important role, and they not only play an important role from a corporate perspective. Even today, the time and age that we're living in terms of businesses and startups coming up, you have a larger younger population coming up with businesses and their own startups. There are times when you can differentiate between two individuals and their thinking process based on how you're interacting with them. So it's not how good they are with the technicalities of their business, but how well can they actually present, represent, and take their business forward also really plays an important role. I've seen this on multiple occasions where I have taken, for example, somebody as a reference to a Y party, and there has to be some kind of business collaboration between the two of them, where one being the client and the other being the service provider, who also happens to be one of my friends. And on the D day, when it actually matters the most, when they're sitting in a conference room and that presentation or that discussion needs to take place, purely because of not presenting, representing, having that dialogue, that conversation, that energy flow, that energy exchange not taking place the right way, that callous attitude, etc., etc., really hampered that process. And we were out of that room in 15 minutes. And on the other hand, I took somebody else as well, about a couple of months later, and he was able to really catch the energy level and represent the business idea, the thought process. There was actually a dialogue taking place. It wasn't a one man show. It wasn't a one way process of communication. It wasn't one way traffic. There was a dialogue, there was energy transpiring, the way he was communicating, his hand gestures, the way he was moving, the way he was making eye contact, the way he was taking everybody else in the room along with the dialogue that was transpiring in that room. That really plays an important role. So it's not just from an interview perspective or from a corporate perspective, it's also for your own business. You really have to work on yourself. And like you said, we are too many. The population is now, India's population is the highest in the world. There's an oversupply of talent, and it's yet difficult to find the right talent, unfortunately. And how do you differentiate? This is where soft skills and the way you carry yourself, the way you are able to even articulate your ideas and your thoughts play a very important role. It's not just how you're saying; it's also having those words and those thoughts come on your tongue, and having a communication process taking place. So it's multidimensional in its own sense. And even in the corporate world, when we talk about youngsters getting absorbed, um, you may land up a job, all right, but then eventually you have to climb up the corporate ladder, and that ladder
Hmm.
also requires certain skill sets. It requires networking, it requires ideation, it requires team building, it requires a lot of different, that becomes multidimensional at an individual level, not just purely on the basis of what you know, but how is it that you can take people along with you. Your leadership skills, again, a soft skill that today, in today's day and age, you need. Also, people to connect with you. So it's not just about what your hierarchical position is, but people need to understand what you're saying. If you aren't a good communicator, if you can't talk their language and help them understand what is right and what is wrong, then irrespective of what your position is, you will never be able to make that impact. So these are little things that really matter. And when we're talking about the hierarchical and the corporate ladder, that is also competition. Eventually there will be limited number of people climbing up that ladder. And how do you differentiate between two individuals in that case? Again, your soft skills play an important role. So soft skills are here to stay. And the sooner you understand what is right, what is wrong, the fact that the boss is not always right, you're able to change your personality to a great extent. It's an ongoing process, and you'll be on the safer side.
Really, masterclass in 5 minutes, Daksh. But as you were speaking, something occurred to me that very early in my career, and this was after my MBA. So it wasn't that I had zero exposure. I had reasonable exposure. I had by then started speaking fairly fluently and confidently by my early standards. This is 1998, and I joined a firm called Kimpro, which was a small quality consulting firm. And on day one, and these were days when you were given printouts of contact lists. So there was nothing
Yeah.
online, no laptop, no online calling and all. And I was just nonchalantly told, this, we have an event coming up. You start calling. Here is the script, 5 points, and you start calling up people for registrations. And I thought I had joined as a consultant, and I just sat dumb for like 15 minutes. I could not understand what to do, and I had zero skills on talking to people on phone. I had developed some skills on talking to people I met, but I then realized that it is a different skill to talk to people on phone, particularly when you are trying to sell something. And but very quickly I realized in 15 minutes that nobody's looking at me. This is it. You just have to go ahead and do it. So and that's what happens today when students come into corporate life, or people, as you said, climb from junior roles to senior roles or mid senior roles and all. they suddenly realize that they have to do much more, and maybe completely different skill sets are required. And if you don't learn those skill sets quickly, it's a race. Somebody else will
It's a
go
race.
ahead, yeah,
Yeah,
and then whether you like it or not, they just leave you behind.
absolutely.
Fantastic. So, just quick reminder to the audience that you can post your questions as and when you feel like. I will keep an eye on the questions on the console, and we can ask Daksh as we go along. So, the obvious second question I would like to ask Daksh is that you know fine, all this is important, but this is too much. Can you kind of summarize into like maybe three or five key points as to what are the things, what are the soft skills, life skills, mandatory skills, whatever we call? What are these skills that are critical, at least in your experience, that you have seen with students and corporate both together? And we can understand maybe some skills are more for corporate and some are more for student. But in general, any list of 3 to 5 skills that our audience can then note down and work upon. And we'll get into how to work upon those skills after
Certainly.
this
Certainly.
question.
Well, firstly, multitasking. We, it's a very underrated way of looking at things, and multitasking doesn't mean that you are doing five things at the same time. But having the bandwidth to do five things, having the upper limit, the threshold of having three, four, five things that you can actually parallelly do and work on is a must today. It's we are living in an era where whether you're doing your own business or you're working for a company, you will have to do multiple things at the same time. Everybody has the same 24 hours. But let's say you have a project working on that you have to work on, let's say, and this project is going to go on for the next 30, 45 days. But then at the same time, there is another project that you probably are working on, and or you're bound to work on, for example, or there's another angle to look at it. In this case, you have two options. One is that you tell your boss or you tell whoever your team leader is that, hey, I can't focus on two things at the same time, give me one task. Now this is, in today's day and age, something that nobody's going to appreciate. You will have to be open to change, you will have to be open to taking up new challenges, and multitasking happens to be an interesting challenge. um, when you talk about it from an entrepreneurial perspective, as an entrepreneur, you would not be just sitting in a glass building in a fancy office and giving orders. It doesn't work like that. You not only have to write emails, you'll be leading a team. You will have to even sell the company. Sell in the sense you have to, crack deals and crack meetings, and that's of course selling your product and business. And you have to deal with challenges, finances. You have to talk from the finance team to the legal team. You will then also have to be aware of what is happening in the market. This is multitasking. This is opening your bandwidth to an extent where you are able to absorb more than what is required of you to do, and still be comfortable with that. So multitasking is a soft skill. It's not something that you will learn out of a textbook. You learn it on the job. However, it can still be grown over a period of time. It's an art, not a skill particularly. It's an art. You can differentiate between two people who can be, good at multitasking than the other, because they've learned it over a period of time. They're open to change. They're open to those challenges. So I think this happens at a very individual level. And another soft skill that happens at an individual level is empathy, understanding where the other person is coming from. Empathy is not just about एक दिलासा दिलाना, कि अच्छा नहीं नहीं आपकी बात समझते हैं, ऐसा नहीं है. From understanding what your clients or your potential clients perspective is, their POV, where is their problem statement stemming from, is equally important, rather than just knowing what is it that you can offer and solve and just call it a day. It cannot be black and white. There has to be that gray area that you have to understand. That is where that dialogue takes place. That is where that back and forth of services takes place. So I see this quite often, where I have, somebody sitting across the table and who just doesn't want to know what my problem statement is. Everybody in business, not all problems are the same. It has to be a customizable solution that you have to offer, a personalized solution that you have to offer in terms of product or service. And if you're not willing or ready to understand where my problem is stemming from, then you are of no use to me. I would rather talk to somebody who can, be on my side, rather than just offer and call it a day and draw a check. That's not what I'm here for. So empathizing with not just your team, empathizing with your client, understanding where the other person is coming in from, really stands out today. And empathy is something which is highly appreciated in the corporate world today. We often see that there are managers, there are team leaders who are the good people, so to say. They're able to get more work done. They're far more efficient because they are empathizing with their team. They know what their challenges are. They understand their strengths and their weaknesses at the same time, and they know how to sort
Yeah.
of maneuver around those challenges and those weaknesses and their strengths. And this can only be possible when you have that openness and that empathy level where you understand where the other person is coming from. I'm not saying कि उसको छूट दे दो, उसकी बात नहीं कर रहे हैं.
Yeah.
समझने
Yeah.
वो ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है. It cannot be just a curtain through which you're talking. So empathy becomes a very important factor over here. Your voice modulation and the way you're able to connect with the other person. Your voice plays a very important role. Even if I'm just standing like this, my facial expressions and my voice, my tone, my voice modulation, the volume, the depth, the stillness in my voice can really play a very important role. Like now, right now, I'm not walking, I'm not talking. I'm sorry, I'm not shaking hands with you. You really can't see my hands move around. So you can't see my body language, so to say. What you can see is probably everything above my shoulder,
Face.
right? And you can
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you can hear me, you can hear my voice. So this has to be an important factor where you are able to control in a very strategic way. Those power words need to have a lot of emphasis on. You have to really understand the other person's sarcasm. You need to smile, you need to make eye contact. अगर मैं इधर उधर देख के बात करूंगा, आप मेरे साथ connect ही नहीं कर पाओगे. Now you could be the
Mm.
guy, you could be the problem solver, but if you can't connect with me at a human level, then there will always be this cloudy question mark around your face whenever you're talking to somebody. And that question mark, more often than not, will lead to failures, and you will never know what is going wrong with me. And again, this is where empathy comes
And
in. Now you have to understand where the other person is coming in from. You need to understand that I might be wrong. The boss is not always right. Again, that is empathy. So, yeah,
and I'll interrupt you a little bit, but this is a very critical point, and which often gets missed in the last few minutes that you spoke about, particularly voice, face, and you know, mostly shoulder and above being seen. In the last 3 4 years, particularly the with the online, Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, on all these calls becoming the norm, even in office calls, people are logging in from wherever they are, and this has become a very very important skill. uh, I keep reminding people that if you are hesitant to come on camera for any reason, uh, on a sustained basis, you are digging a hole for yourself.
absolutely.
So please understand. And
Absolutely.
you may think that you can sit in the kitchen, or on the bed, or in the balcony, and don't want to bring up your face on a regular basis, uh, using whatever opportunity you have for work from home and all that. Please understand, you are in a huge minority. Everybody else is taking advantage of that opportunity, and actually bringing their best face forward, and people who are missing out are really going to pay the price.
Absolutely.
You make a choice, you pay the price.
Absolutely.
So sorry, Daksh, I thought this was a critical point, so I thought I'll bring it up,
So this
particularly
is
from a career point of view.
this is standard practice today. Work from home is of course limited today, but it's still an option. There are, I don't
In
know how
some
many,
industries, like IT and ITS, it is still
it's still
quite
going on.
prevalent. Yeah, still
And
going on. So
you know, the moment there'll be an opportunity for someone to decide whether someone is serious or not, how professional are they, आपको पता भी नहीं चलेगा, but आपके नाम के
yeah,
अगेंस्ट आटा लग चुका होगा. So you're
I
digging a hole,
keep
and it's a clicking time bomb, nothing else.
I keep saying that your fate in life is decided in a room where you are never there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you are not there, but whatever you have done till that date, or not
yeah.
done, will decide your fate, and you don't have that opportunity. It is not a court of law that you will have an opportunity to defend yourself. You won't even
Absolutely.
know what happened.
Yes,
So
very
anyway,
well.
sorry, I had to interrupt, but you spoke about multitasking, empathy, and voice and facial expression. Anything else you want to add to that uh, series of
So,
life skills?
an extended version of the online purview that we had of soft skills, everything above our shoulder. Then your body language, how well are you groomed, in terms of how you carry yourself, also plays a very important role. That's of course in the offline setup, when you're traveling. So I travel a lot, and I travel primarily for work, and it becomes very important for me to put my best foot forward. There's an old saying that your first impression is the last impression. Your first impression is the last impression. For those people who are merely there to have a look at you, who you are, observe you from a distance, maybe just a quick introduction, and that's about it. Um, of course, when you have somebody that you're talking for a longer period of time, there may be a first impression is the last impression may not stand entirely true. But the more often than not, what happens in my kind of service sector, my kind of like business is that I am in regular talks with somebody who is getting me to the right person, but that right person will only interact with me for a few minutes, for a few maybe maybe half an hour, maybe 5 minutes, maybe it will just be a pitching in the lift, where we are going from ground zero to maybe the seventh floor, and that's the only time I have. And this is where you and your personality and your best foot forward really comes into perspective, because that person, whoever you're talking to, doesn't have the entire day to sit with you, relax with you, understand who you are. That person has very limited time for everybody. So in those 30 seconds to about 2 minutes, 5 minutes, if you're able to create that
Yeah.
impression through who you are, the way you carry yourself, power words, and everything that we just spoken about, you can actually make that first impression being the best impression. And if you're able to do that,
Hmm.
like you just mentioned, fate is decided in rooms where you're never in, and you will allow somebody else to decide your fate, of course, in the room that you will never be in. And for all you know, you have a deal. So this happens quite frequently with us, as far as my line of business is concerned, and that's also one of the reasons why I tend to travel a little more than the other people representing me, because what I can do and how I pitch and how confident I am with myself is very different from how other people are. So this is a very important, very important point which a lot of people miss. From wearing random sports socks with formal shoes to not having the right haircut while you're moving around. There's no color coordination of things, not having a proper firm handshake, or if it's too hard, too strong, or if it's too gentle, not having the right attitude, the right eye contact, having a very random, funny ringtone. For all you know, the phone rings. I mean, these are little things that really matter, and it really irritates the other person at times. And if you're so, you have to be responsible for yourself, not for the other
Yeah.
person. You have to keep, again, this is empathy, right? Understanding where the other person is coming from. So you have to understand the other person across the desk, rather than just be कि हम वही करेंगे जो हमें मन करता है. I think that attitude needs to go away, and it's okay for your own drawing room and your own bedroom, but not on days when it actually matters.
I think this whole thing about I'll be myself is a little overplayed. All it
Absolutely
means is that I will be, you know, the person that I am. Doesn't mean that you disrespect the environment. Doesn't mean that you disrespect the other people in the room, and or the occasion in some cases, right? So this and look, for sometimes the blatant naked truth is that if you reach some lofty place in life, whatever you do or wear may become fashion, but till then you have to follow the rules of the
absolutely
world.
absolutely.
So that is sometimes missed, and like you very rightly said, these impressions are made in very 5, 10, 15, 20 seconds kind of things. If it is said that a resume reviewer takes only 5 seconds to
Yes,
select
yes.
or swipe right or swipe left in today's language on
Yeah, yeah.
for a resume, in a offline or online mode you get maybe 10 seconds, maybe
True.
15
Very
seconds,
true.
and if
Very
you're
true.
going to waste those 10, 15 seconds in everything else other than the core,
Yeah,
you're lost,
absolutely.
right? And the people making the choice or the judgment in this case are possibly selecting or reviewing multiple candidates. Your job, particularly, or anybody else who's in that situation, their job is to make sure they put their best foot forward in that time.
Yeah.
I still remember, and this is a very amusing story, Daksh, that some years ago I had I was interviewing candidates, and it was a day long session, so I had to interview multiple candidates. One person was quite delayed. Anyway, since I had other candidates, I continued with the session, but he got reasonably delayed. But and the HR and all, they finally filled me in that guys turned up XYZ. Long story short, eventually he turns up, and turns up with his sleeves folded, formal shirt but sleeves folded, sweating profusely. And so I realized that maybe he's made some effort. So I offered him, maybe you take 5-10 minutes to calm down, have a glass of water, freshen up, and then we'll. He declined that offer. He said, "No, I'm fine." Um, I again offered. I said, "Look, you look a little disheveled, hassled." But anyway, interview went fine from his point of view, not from fine from my point of view. I completely rejected the candidate on merit grounds. I disregarded the delay part because it happens.
Of course, yeah.
After about a year, I was in another company, uh, and, and luck would have it, I was again interviewed for a similar role, and this man turns up. He
Again.
obviously didn't bargain for my memory, and I have a pretty elephantine memory about particularly people I meet. And I exactly knew from the name that this is the same person, but I waited for the person to land, and he was again late, and he was
Oh,
again disheveled. And this time, what do? I didn't even have to interview him because
yeah.
this is now, this is lightning strikes twice. So I often narrate the story in my sessions because it has happened, and it is a very extreme example of what could be happening to everybody else.
True,
So
very
please
true.
don't take these things lightly. It's an important thing. I gave him two chances in the first one, but he obviously did not get the connection that why am I giving that chance. I still ignored that opportunity, but as luck would have it, or his bad luck, he turned up in the with the same person again in
What are the
only
odds
within
of,
a year.
I mean, if you were to calculate the odds of,
This is never heard of. I in my long career I have interviewed, of course,
never heard of it.
hundreds, or maybe thousands of people,
Never
and
heard
it has never happened. Never had the same candidate again.
of
That too
it.
within a year, and the person making the same stupidity again.
Yeah, so it's a
So
part of, it speaks a lot about that person. Had this been, okay, on the flip side, in a different parallel universe, had this guy
sure.
showed up on time, in the best version of himself, all decked up, and this time he's wearing, proper formal clothing, and
Hmm.
he's sitting across, you would probably give him the benefit of the doubt, and you might, actually,
Absolutely.
say that, okay, chalo yaar, jo ho gaya so ho gaya. Though he didn't recognize you, that's what you're saying, right? So he probably didn't
Yeah,
have
he
that memory
didn't.
of it. So in back at the back of your mind, you will say that, okay, chalo, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. But that did not happen, and so it became standard practice. कि यार इसकी personality ऐसी है, because if somebody is repeating something, then it speaks a little differently of that person, that uh, you can't really fake it till you make it, because if you are like that, then you can't really help it.
Yeah. I Each time I have a conversation on this topic, this example keeps coming. I actually remember the name of the person as well.
I have a few examples to give. So I
Sure.
was interviewing for some of our positions open last year, last to last year, 22, and we had a few candidates coming in with their resumes, right?
Hmm.
And your resume is a very important document. It's your professional journey on a sheet of paper. You can't take it lightly. Also, you have all the time in the world to make it, so it's not that you had 5 minutes and you had a stress of time, and there was grammatical mistakes because of that, or there were alignment issues before because of that. You have all the time in the world to make it. So if you can't make your own document professionally, how can I trust you with my work? Anyway, so this gentleman walks in, and again, typically casually dressed up, but fairly decent. So gave him the benefit of the doubt, and he handed over his resume, So for example, I have a sheet of paper over here. So this अभी तो एक कोरा कागज है, but अगर ये एक resume होता, so
Yeah.
you hold it with both your hands and you offer it, in a very gentle way, the way you're supposed to offer a business card, by the way. तो उसने वो आया, I was sitting in the room and उसने ऐसे पकड़ा दिया जी, ये लो जी मेरा resume.
Hmm.
Not even on the table. He's holding it parallel to maybe at the level of my neck, of my chin.
Hmm.
वैसे पकड़ा रहा है.
Hmm.
And what does this speak about somebody? It. I mean, you can have multiple ways of looking at it, but this is not the right way of greeting, introducing yourself to somebody who is the decision maker in the room, and at least respect that authority sitting in the room to just be a little professional about
This
it. I mean,
is
it doesn't really require anything but common sense, which is not
the,
so common
these are
today.
the people, Daksh, who come to collect the offer letter. They are not there for the interview.
Yeah, that too for the
So,
effortless काम हो जाए हमारा. Now here's the
हाँ,
interesting
बस.
part. Here's the interesting part. Now on his resume, he basically had a very shabby looking resume,
Hmm.
and the worst part was that he had made photocopies of his resume. It wasn't a specifically
Print
printed.
out.
It wasn't a
Hmm.
printout. It was a photocopy, and that photocopy was a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. And how do I know this? Because he told me. And I asked him that why is the resolution? I can barely read two words. Why is it so
Hmm.
shabby? So he said, Kushni sir, I had a printout, I had taken a photocopy and I had submitted in my college at one of the fairs. And then I realized that I had to come for this interview also. So I asked my friend to get a photocopy of this, which was also a photocopy. And I lost that and I needed two copies. So I got another two photocopies made of the same photocopy. And so he told me this was the third photocopy. So I said, don't you have the basic common sense of knowing that you are presenting a document which someone is going to read and offer you salary instead?
Hmm.
And I can't even read the document properly because you haven't even printed out properly. And he said, he was obviously he didn't really counter that, but his body language and his attitude was as if what's the big deal in that, So there was actually no, and this has happened multiple. And the best part, which I'm not boasting about this, but I literally tore that resume in front of his face, and I said that thank you for coming.
Hmm.
And I kept
No, I'm
there.
glad you did that because that's the only way he'll probably remember.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And that might
so,
actually do some good where he realizes that this is not the right way. अब वो आया भी
yeah.
1.5 घंटे मेट्रो में बैठ के और 10 मिनट में उसका रेज्यूमे फाड़ के कोई उसको हाथ में पकड़ा रहा है, तो कहीं ना कहीं तो ट्रिगर होना चाहिए ना कुछ. अगर वो ट्रिगर हुआ and maybe it's a better version of himself post that meeting,
Then it
might
is
say
worth it.
yeah, something might, because ये कहीं ना कहीं जाके again is a ticking time bomb. Somewhere down the line someone will suffer from it. So I think this is at a very human level, at a very basic level, where people need to start understanding that you have to be in a setup and you have to groom yourself in a certain way where it's going to make a lot of difference. How would you compare the students understanding pre-COVID and post-COVID? Also, I would request for a similar comparison in the mindsets of professionals and companies pre and post-pandemic. Perfect. That's a very interesting question. As far as students' understanding is concerned, there's been a drastic change, a very obvious and a tangible change. We see students looking at work from home, like we just discussed, to be normal. They want it to be normal. They want to have the comfort of their blankets and their ACs at home and their balconies to work from. And in reality, from the corporate perspective, from the company owner's perspective, it's at least half the efficiency that you can achieve through office work. And this is something that the workforce doesn't want to bother about. They still feel that मेरा काम आसान हो रहा है, 50% कम efficiency में मेरे को मेरी salary मिल रही है, मैं घर बैठे बैठे काम करूंगा या करूंगी.
Hmm.
There is no one with a डंडा, there's nobody as a team leader looking at me कि मैं क्या कर रहा हूँ, मैं कितने कॉफी ब्रेक्स ले रहा हूँ, या मैं काम किस तरीके से टाल रहा हूँ, बिकॉज वर्क फ्रॉम होम में ये सारी चीजें चलती हैं. There's always that gray area. So that, I think, in terms of an approach to the corporate world is very obvious for students, because most of their college was during their COVID times, and 2.5 years of just online studies has really triggered them, to be in a very natural way of working from home and being in front of a screen and doing and do their business. But it's not going to work in the long run. So थोड़ा सा time लगेगा इस mentality से निकलने के लिए, and that is also one of the reasons why it's very difficult to find the right people these days. People who are, so I would rather hire somebody who's closer to my office than somebody
Hmm.
who is at a distance, because I know कि उसका 3 दिन उसको वर्क फ्रॉम होम चाहिए, या वो 2 दिन छुट्टी मारेगा ही मारेगा, या मुझे पता है कि वो कम सैलरी ले लेगा लेकिन घर से काम करेगा, जो मुझे एक्सेप्टेबल नहीं है. So, that's also one problem and challenge that at least I'm facing, and a lot of people, a lot of HRs I'm in touch with. I have very good relations with a few HRs in top companies, and it's very, very prominent as a
Very
problem
difficult.
state. Yeah.
It is certainly. I work for a large IT services firm, and we also see the same challenge. Of course, the nature of our work sometimes is that it does
It's
make
better
it
to,
easier to work from home, or in some cases, some jobs are quite okay to work from remote. But still, as an overall problem statement, it's something on our leadership team, which we discuss almost every meeting. So it is a factor, and it's not going away anytime soon. Okay. One quick question came from Josefa. I'll quickly bring it in. So Josefa is talking about, I want to understand both of your perspectives. So Josefa, first of all, the expert is Daksh. So you can't
no,
ask
no,
the same
no.
question to both. On how to build the will of an individual who's super confident about his or her hard skills but does not want to prioritize soft skills. That's an interesting one. So Josefa's question essentially, Daksh, is that uh, somebody who's good at their work, hard skills, domain, whatever subject area, but is not too willing to build on the soft skills. Maybe a person on your team, maybe somebody colleague, a teammate, anything. How would you go about this? Because this is, I'm sure, a problem that all of us face. That we know people who just don't want to invest time and effort in their soft skills or core skills or life skills.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting question, and this is also something that a lot of corporates are facing problems with, and with new joinees, with people who have already been there for so long that that change doesn't really, it's not very acceptable, and there's a lot of things that at the junior level employees aren't able to communicate properly because of the seniority and the level of authority that exists. So red tapeism also comes into perspective. So let me give it to you from a different angle altogether. As far as my company and my work structure looks like, I'm very blunt about it, and I'm not saying that I'll make you uncomfortable. I'll give you your space. I'll get into a very different conversation and bring this up using my strategy of communicating, and I'll then narrate an incident that happened where they could have done better and where they went wrong. And I can only do that if I have built that trust and that 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 space for them where they can be vulnerable, I can be vulnerable in front of them. And if you are able to establish that relationship between somebody who's working with you, not for you, with you, pointing this out where somebody could have prioritized their soft skill and this is how they should have approached this, becomes very easy for them to understand, and it becomes as part of my responsibility most of the times, where I must tell them as soon as I can. जितना उसको हम नॉर्मलाइज कर देंगे उतना चैलेंजिंग उसको बाद में ठीक करना हो जाता है. So the sooner you come across something that can be adjusted, can be rectified, the better it is. And this happens while writing emails, while talking to somebody over a Zoom meeting, while interacting with somebody, or even within teams. There are times when people are interacting
Yeah,
and
yeah,
किसी ने
yeah.
किसी को बोला और इस तरीके से बोला, उस टाइम पे तो वो बात किसी ने नोटिस नहीं करी, बट कहीं ना कहीं वो जाके it sticks at the back of somebody's head, which is not right for you as a company owner, as somebody who needs to get the job done. You can't have that cold war, or you can't have those uh, little situations in your company. So these are things that I have to really watch out for, and now I've trained the next line of authority to also look into this as soon as they can. That becomes very, very important at times. Just to take that into a different perspective again, there are times when you have people, could be friends, could be colleagues, could be people in different organizations, who are also making similar mistakes, or can focus a little more on certain soft skills, या आपने उस मीटिंग में उससे ना थोड़ा सा ऐसे बात करते तो शायद वो डील क्रैक हो जाती. Now to say
Hmm.
this to somebody will be challenging their way of doing work, which will actually more often than not backfire. यार अब तुम मुझे मैं
Yeah.
बताओ मेरे को काम कैसे करना है, या तुम मुझे मैं बताओ मेरे को बात कैसे करना है. So I think you have to
Hmm.
be very flexible, very careful, very. You have to establish that sense of vulnerability for each other. Only then can you actually approach this. Because even I would not want to listen about something that I would have done wrong from somebody outrightly. यार तुझे ऐसा बात नहीं करना चाहिए था. For me, I will, as a human, I would try to re-emphasize that कि नहीं यार ये तो ठीक था, तू मुझे कैसे बताएगा. So to establish
Yeah.
that zone, that friendliness, that vulnerability, for each other, that vulnerable zone becomes very very important. Only then एक अच्छे तरीके से आप एक दूसरे से बात कर सकते हो. इनफैक्ट घर में भी होता है. घर की मुर्गी दाल
Yeah.
बराबर है.
Yeah.
और घर में भी चीजें होती हैं. आपको आपके पेरेंट्स की तरीका कई बार नहीं पसंद आता, या उनको आपका नहीं समझ आता. बट टू हैव दैट कॉन्वर्सेशन, you can't have it every single day, of course. You can't have it on a
Correct.
bad. You have to have it on a good day where the conversation is such and you're able to understand each other. There's a dialogue, and people understand. People understand. That's not an issue.
Really well said. So, Daksh, we are approaching the end of the conversation. I can't believe that we are almost at at 1 hour. But this is the joy of speaking to somebody who has been doing fantastic work with people. So, thank you very much for that opportunity to learn from you. But one question I have, without which I will not let you go, is that all this is fine. Maybe we have now understood that these are the areas to explore. Multitasking, you spoke about empathy, you spoke about public speaking or facial expressions, how you land in a room, how you engage. I keep telling everybody that don't look for dramatic changes, look for 5% change,
Yeah.
10% better.
Yeah.
Don't, because if you are somebody, for example, I often have something funny or humorous in a meeting situation, and it comes naturally to me, and I don't have to make any extra effort. In fact, I have to make extra effort to
Not be funny.
keep quiet, because sometimes that situation may not be.
Yeah.
But there have been people who come to me that I want to learn this, and I keep saying that please no, you add that 5% thing, that is more than enough, because you have your core skill. You will be able to turn up the same person every day. Consistency will be there. So that's something I wanted to remind the audience. But the question for you a little bit deeper is that how do people how can people improve, so maybe after watching this live show or the recording, some people will make an assessment that okay, they are not good at one of these things that you spoke about. So in general, how do you suggest they go about improving their skill set in a nutshell, if in 2 3 minutes, if you can share?
Well, a couple of things I can, in a nutshell, point out. The first is the more number of people you interact with who are either senior to you or who
Hmm.
have done much more than you in life, there's much more to learn from them than anybody else. So that's one.
Hmm.
Be in a room where you're not the smartest person, where you haven't achieved, which is maybe 20, 30, 40, 50% of what everybody else has achieved. So try to get into those kinds of rooms. The conversation is very different, firstly. Secondly, you will be compelled, and your subconscious mind will start learning in a cognitive way. So this is called
Hmm.
cognitive learning, where you're observing, and through your sensory organs you're trying to learn unknowingly. And little things of how somebody is talking, the way they're using humor, the way they are approaching a situation, or the way they are storytelling, their storytelling skills, the way they are shaking hands, the way they are standing out in the room, becoming the alpha in the room. These are little things that you can only observe with people who are not at your level, but they're far above you, in
Better,
terms
yeah.
of not just seniority, but in terms of zindagi mein ukhada kya hai. So having that level of humility in that room will teach you a lot. The conversation is going to be different. The people are going to be different. Their approaches are going to be different. You'll be learning far more soft skills than anywhere else. There's no online course that can teach you all soft skills. It doesn't work like that. So it's an ongoing process. But even before that, at a very human level, you have to understand that the boss is not always right, which
Hmm.
means that you are not always right. So if you think that there is that this is the way of going about doing things, that itself is a flaw. There has to be a better way. There has to be a different way of doing it. Accepting that, establishing that for yourself, will automatically allow you to open up your subconscious mind for cognitive learning and to coming up with a better approach to things. And this is where, at a human level, you have to first start. That though I'm approaching something in a certain way, this is my way of talking. This is how I like to dress up. This is how I like to interact with people. If you think that this is the best way and this is the way to go about doing things, that's a flaw in its own way. There should be a better way. You should be open to change. You should be open to allow a better version of yourself to creep in. So, wo at a very human level, it takes some bit of time to come into that zone. And I'll give you an example, very quick example. I did this while I was doing an internship long back, and I was interning at a startup. And this gentleman had two startups, two of his own businesses. And for me as a student, I would be like, yeah, this is the inspiration I need. Somebody who's running two businesses. This is the person I want to work with. There's so much learning, etc., etc. The worst boss to ever have. He would never be open to suggestions. He would want me to do the work, but अगर मैं कुछ suggest कर रहा हूँ common sense से, because I'm at the grassroots level, he would have his own way of thinking, which is absolutely wrong. So for him, in his own world, he was always right. And this was the case with everybody else working under him. So we used to have these discussions कि सर मानेंगे नहीं ना, बोलने का फायदा नहीं है. So it also taught me that this is not the person I want to be like. But it was the best experience I have till date, because it made me into that person where I will have to be open to change. I should be open to change. So
really well said. Yeah.
the moment you are in that zone where you're open to change, you know that there are people better than you. They can teach you. You should be in a better room. You should be in a room full of people where they have achieved certain great heights. You will be a better version of yourself every single time you are there.
Fantastically said, Daksh. I think as you were speaking, I did realize that you can't really learn swimming by watching YouTube videos.
Absolutely.
So you can maybe improve a little bit, but you still have to go out and practice it. So one thing I learned in the last few minutes that you shared is that change your company as in people who you are with, because if you are with better people, like Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people you are spend most time with. So if you are in better company, you will automatically raise your game. You will observe better skill sets, and human nature is to imbibe and mimic in some ways.
Yes,
So
yes.
if you see better behavior around you, better skill sets, you will learn. And most importantly, in case you want to get better and learn from somebody, you really have a role model next to you. You can observe. If required, you can talk to them. If required, you can learn from them, ask them questions. So really fantastically summed up. Thanks very much, Daksh. That's pretty much the end of the show. Really enjoyed this conversation. I deliberately didn't have very prepared questions, because then what's the point? Anybody can go and watch a YouTube video. Sharing your experience is far more worthy. So thank you very much for that. And to my audience, some of you have asked questions which we could not pick in the session. So what we will do is that both Daksh and I will go to the feed later on during the day, and we'll try and answer as much as we can.
Certainly.
But I will suggest that you follow Daksh, because once you follow him, much of what he's saying today or has shared today, he also shares free of cost on his LinkedIn handle. So you don't have to pay. Of course, he runs several other companies, including training and other things. So if you do want those services, you can always inquire a little bit more there. So with that, Daksh, I'll let you go. And for my audience, thank you very much. Same time next week, most likely. Just a little bit of a struggle with confirming the speaker, so don't worry. But most likely we'll have. And in March, we will be having another series with some overseas speakers. So the timing may change to an evening time to accommodate some of these sessions. But thank you very much for your support. And Daksh, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anshuman. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.